everybody. This is Melissa Kay, your instructor for Occupational Therapy 212. And I'm just recording this little short interlude here because I just recorded your middle adulthood lecture and my camera malfunctioned. And so rather than seeing the front of my face, you're seeing the side of my face the whole time. It's a almost 50-minute lecture, so I'm not going to re-record it, but please rest assured that I do my utmost to provide you with high-quality lectures, and hopefully seeing the side of my face is not too distracting. All right. Without further ado, here we go. And thanks for your patience. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Occupational Therapy 212, Occupation Through the Lifespan. My name is Melissa Kay, and I'll be your instructor. Today's lecture is on middle adulthood, and this particular presentation was originally created in 2020 by my students Stephanie Lake, Matthew Kawakami, Masha Rotfeld, and Kelly Feynman. So thank you very much for starting off this presentation, and I have revised and upgraded it, and now will be presenting to you. So without further ado, let's get started. We have three objectives today. The first is to describe the theories that are associated with middle adulthood, then to review developmental changes in middle adulthood across domains, and finally to discuss how disability and other issues might affect middle adults in terms of their development and occupational engagement. When we think about middle-aged adults, we think of people who are 40 to 65 years old. We also sometimes refer to this as the sandwich generation, and what that means is that people in this age group often have dual responsibilities of caring for both older and younger generations. So caring for their parents who are aging, and also potentially caring for children and even sometimes grandchildren. There's two generations associated with middle adulthood. The first is Gen X, and those are people who were born between 1965 and 1980. They're the early middle adults. And the baby boomers, who were born between 1944 and 1964. They're the late middle adults. And the baby boomers are termed the quote-unquote gloomiest generation. A lot of the negativity is associated with a lot of caregiving strains and also a huge recession that happened. So 40 to 65, and it's a big span. So do consider that people that are on either end of that continuum may behave and may have very different experiences. All right, so theory. We have three theorists, and I've already discovered a typo in my deck here. Sorry about that. I like to have everything all put together. Anyway, three theorists: Erickson, Shale and Willis, and Super. So Erickson, we've been following from birth all the way up through middle adulthood, right? And this stage is stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. So in this particular, if you'll recall, there's a conflict and then a potential resolution to each of the stages. So the conflict is stagnation, right? So dissatisfaction, lack of productivity. Sometimes we think about the midlife crisis, a belief that life is meaningless, and a lot of self-absorbing thoughts. The other side of it, right, so if there is a resolution to this conflict, is something called generativity. And what that means is a sense of productivity and accomplishment. And if you think about it, middle adults are at kind of the peak of their career. They're in their career. They've kind of made it, and they may or may not be super near retirement. So they're right in that really solid work and life and family kind of place. Shale and Willis is about cognitive development, and middle adults are in two different aspects of that. One is the responsible stage, which is associated with establishment of a family, complex cognitive skills that are required for responsibilities, both a job and in the community. And then the executive stage, which is about adults assuming leadership positions in their family, in their community, and in their careers. So not all adults move into this executive stage. With regard to supers stages, this theorist is mostly concerned with adult career development, and we're going to look at that a little while later when we get to our portion on work and employment. But there's, again, two stages that the middle-aged adult straddles. The first is establishment. So middle adults are building new skills and work experience still, and you can see that maybe from our 40 years olds. And also, the stage of establishment starts in early adulthood and continues on into middle adulthood. Then the other stage is maintenance, and middle adults in this stage are adjusting to improve or maintain their position in terms of career, but they're not starting anew. There's 5 stages, but the timing and transition is a function of one's individual life circumstances and personality, not necessarily their chronological age. I would also say that, in today's job market, things have changed very much. And so even middle adults are not always like smack in the middle of a job they've held for a long time and they're continuing to hold and they're planning on to retire with this position. They may be changing jobs or building new skills or switching careers either laterally or, or into something totally different or up and down just because of the nature of employment and work in society today. All right, so that's our theory. Let's talk about physical changes. So if you'll recall, from birth all the way up through early adulthood, what's happening for the individual is that they are getting more and more and more skills, ability, refinement, dexterity, all of that, right? And in middle adulthood, we see a different pattern, and that is a pattern of decline. There are some skills that are still improving or at their peak, but there's also a number of abilities and parts and pieces that are starting to decline. So let's pull that apart a little bit. We have changing mental disabilities, and you'll see on this left-hand side with the bullet points that vocabulary is increasing, verbal memory is increasing, spatial orientation, and inductive reasoning. And inductive reasoning is the ability to recognize and understand patterns and the relationships amongst variables to solve problems. So you can easily apply that to technology as well as engineering and a wide variety of other types of careers. So those abilities are still increasing as evidenced by the up arrows. And then the things that are starting to decline are the ability to perform simple math computations quickly and accurately, and perceptual speed. And perceptual speed is the ability to quickly discriminate visual stimuli, and this starts to decrease in middle adulthood. All right, and then in terms of cognitive functioning, we have neurogenesis happening. We also have a shrinking of the hippocampus, the cortex, and the cerebellum. So when you think about it, it makes sense that memory is starting to decline, higher higher level, quick kinds of intellectual capabilities and also some movement capabilities as associated with each of those areas of the brain. There's also a number of risk factors that are associated with this decline: hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and high cholesterol. So we start seeing that come into the picture in middle adulthood for more people. And there's also some protective factors. So education is one of those, as is work and physical exercise. So when you think about education, you're like, what's the connection there, right? But the higher educational level, the more able and willing potentially an individual is to figure out what's up with them and to pursue protective factors and preventative factors. There's also gender differences in cognitive functioning. Women overall have greater improvements in mental abilities than men do. Yay, women. And men reach peak performance on spatial orientation, vocabulary, and verbal memory in their 50s, while women typically peak 10 years later. Again, yay, women. All right, let's look at sensory function, and we're going to be looking in particular at vision and hearing. So, I am living proof that vision and hearing change in a declining fashion in middle adulthood. Vision is usually stable to about 50, and then there's some decline. A lot of people need more light for the eyes to change and accommodate and focus. And when there's proper light and contrast, it's easy to accommodate. Changes that occur include lens transparency, the amount of light that's coming in, and the number of macular neurons. And at this point, since I haven't mentioned it, I do want to bring up that there is a lot of great information in the presenter notes, so please download the presentation. It's available to you, and check out the presenter notes both for following along with the lecture, reviewing, and studying for your exams. All right, so back to changes in vision. There's also deterioration in the ciliary muscle action. So what results is presbyopia, and that is the age-related decline focusing on near objects, or farsightedness. So farsightedness means you can't see near, and nearsightedness means you can't see far, for those of you that don't wear glasses. Visual accommodation is less effective, and many middle-aged adults require a form of visual correction, commonly reading glasses, or like in my case, I'm already nearsighted, and so I have gone to bifocals. That's the visual system. And then we also have changes in the auditory or hearing system. The lowest level of sound that one can that can be heard increases with age. So middle adults have a reduced ability to hear very high-pitched noises. This starts as early as 30 years of age, but there's a number of common hearing issues as well. Presbycusis, which is age-related inner ear dysfunction, and it diminishes auditory acuity. And this is the most common form of hearing loss, right? So it's usually noticeable after age 60. So a lot of our middle adults that are verging on late adulthood will start to miss things in conversations. They'll need a quieter space in order to focus on conversation, and eventually this can result in the need for hearing aids. There's also sensory neural hearing loss, which is due to problems with the inner ear and poor cochlear hair cell functions. So this can come from a lot of exposure to loud noises, such as loud music or power tools. I know you'll find it hard to believe, but I actually have some sensory neural hearing loss due to being a punk rocker in my 20s or teens and 20s and early 30s, and just being exposed to tons of loud music. So a new wave or a punk rocker, and then kind of a post-punk rocker. Anyway, so this condition, sensory neural hearing loss, affects people's sensitivity to sound, speech comprehension, and interestingly, maintenance of equilibrium. So when we think about it, the vestibular and the cochlear systems are right next door to each other, united by the vestibulocochlear nerve, right? And so the hair cells get more brittle, the fluid ceases to flow as well within those apparatuses, and it can result in a more sensitive vestibular system. So you'll see a lot of middle-aged people who used to really love roller coasters and fast rides and and doing all sorts of wild stuff now are like, not so much, right? Because the vestibular system is not as elastic and flexible. All right. So, word to the wise, wear earplugs when you go to concerts.